Oh, well, there are various parts of the UN work on space. So you have the Office of Disarmament Affairs is one. The First Committee in New York is another one. And in Vienna we have the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. And so for several years I edited all the documents for them, including their legal and scientific and technical subcommittees. And what I can tell you is that the two major issues that were always talked of were space debris and weaponization. So right now, I don't know if it's because of 25 years of cell phone use, but it's like we have gone into some sort of collective amnesia, because the 5G rollout is totally illegal. It's totally illegal on every level. The number of international treaties that it breaches, I can't even list them for you, but environmental treaties, human rights, space law, it's astonishing. And so the two issues at the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space were always space debris and weaponization. And it's almost as if those discussions never ever took place, because now we're putting up 53,000 satellites, and the two issues, let's separate them. So the space debris. There was a paper written, I think, back in the 1970s and 1980s by a man called Kessler, who posited what became called the Kessler syndrome. And what he says is that if you reach a point where you have so much space debris that it starts colliding, you could have a cascade effect where you cannot stop the constant cascade of collisions, and you would have a situation where the space orbits became unusable for 1,000 years.
Please explain to us where this space debris comes from. How does that happen?
Well, we've had a lot of space exploration, obviously, for decades, and so certain countries have actually attacked their own satellites.
So it's satellites, from satellites, it's from rockets, or from
rockets,
space
satellites,
stations that they have there?
All the activities that have gone on in space. So you've had, I think the US has also attacked its own satellite. Certainly China did, and India did. India did that earlier this year. And when you destroy your own satellite, of course, it shatters into I don't know how many pieces. And you have to consider that the velocity at which these pieces travel means that the tiniest piece could cause such damage, for example, to the International Space Station, that it could no longer function. So the tiniest, it's not a question of size, the tiniest piece can be absolutely devastating.
Wow.
And they estimate that there are over 500,000 pieces of space debris already, and by 2025 they estimate...
How can it cause damage when it's so tiny?
Because of the velocity at which it travels. Also there was a project during the Cold War called Project West Forward, where the Americans put up 480 million needles into the Earth orbits, and those are still up there. They're floating around. So if you look at a picture of space debris, if you go onto YouTube, for example, and look up the Kessler syndrome or space junk, you can actually see the tremendous amount of space debris that exists up there. And so at the UN, for year after year after year, they constantly talked about the dangers from space debris. And now suddenly we've forgotten all of that. It's like we never had those discussions, but now we're going to put up 53,000 satellites and nobody considers it a problem anymore. But the other issue that constantly came up year by year was the issue of weaponization of space. that the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 bans weapons in space. It's actually illegal. Now, the problem with the weaponization of space is, of course, you don't have visibility. You can't look out the window and see what's happening in the Earth orbits. So if a military satellite, and of course the militaries all depend increasingly on their intelligence satellites. So if one of these satellites blips out suddenly and makes that country vulnerable, now if that country believes that it was another state that caused the blindness of their satellite, they could launch nuclear missiles. They could think that they're under attack. It's tremendously dangerous. This issue of weaponization in space. And again, this is another issue where it's as if these conversations never ever took place, because now we have NATO this December intends to designate space a domain of warfare. And this year, President Trump announced a space force. President Macron of France has also announced a space force. Where are we going now? We have descended into lunacy now. And all I can suppose is that because we've had 25 years of cell phones, people have lost their minds. It's unimaginable what is happening now.